Hello everyone. ทีนี้เราไฟล์ตรงไปလုပ်ဖို့ရှိပါတယ်။ Python CF15 ကိုဒီနေ့လေ့လာသွားမယ်။
All right, this is CS50's Introduction to Programming with Python. My name is David Malin, and this is our week on libraries. So libraries are generally files of code that other people have written that you can use in your own programs, or a library is code that you've written that you can use in your own program, but maybe not just this program, but another and another as well. So Python supports exactly this idea, this ability to share code with others, share code across your own projects, and it does so by way of what it calls module. A module in Python is just a library that typically has one or more functions or other features built into it. Generally, the purpose of a library, or a module specifically, is to encourage reusability of code. If you find yourself using the same types of functions again and again, the same functionality, if you find yourself copying and pasting from an old project into your new project, odds are there's an opportunity there to factor out that code that you keep copying and pasting, that you keep reusing, and put it into a library that you can then load into your programs moving forward, so as to not just copy and paste it and have all these different copies all over. So what are some of the modules or libraries that Python comes with? Well, Python comes with a random library, literally, which is to say that when you install the Python interpreter on your Mac or PC or somewhere in the cloud, not only do you get Python, you get a whole bunch of modules as well. Now, these modules provide you with functions that you don't have access to just by default, like you do print and input. Print and input and other such functions just work in Python. But sometimes functions are tucked away in these modules, so you have to be more deliberate about loading them into the computer's memory. So somewhere on the computer's hard drive, once you've installed Python, there is also, it turns out, a file probably called random.py that someone else wrote, probably long ago, but that you have access to. And in that random.py file, there's probably one or more functions that you yourself can use in order to do things randomly. That is to say, how could you flip a coin in a program in Python? How could you pick a random number between 1 and 10 in Python? Well, you need a bit of randomness. And while you could figure out mathematically how to write functions like that yourself, it's a lot easier to stand on the shoulders of others who've already solved that problem for you, so you can focus on the problem that you yourself want to solve. So for documentation on most any Python module, you go to the official Python docs and you go to a URL like this. Of those values randomly with equal probability. Because I've passed in two items, I've got a 50-50 chance. If
ဆိုလို့ရှိရင် random ကိုမှတော့ random ဆိုတဲ့ library ကိုခေါ်လိုက်တာဘယ်လိုခေါ်လဲဆိုလို့ရှိရင် input ကိုသုံးပြီးတော့ input ဆိုပြီးသုံးပြီးတော့ random ဆိုတဲ့ library ကိုခေါ်လိုက်တာ
If I passed in 3 items, it'd be a 33% chance for each of those items and so forth. Python does the math for you. But I want to store the value of this in a variable, so let's define a variable called
random တော့လို့ထည့်လိုက်မယ်ပြီးတော့နောက်တစ်ခုတခြားပေါ့နော် choice ဆိုပြီးတော့သူ့ရဲ့ဒီ array ထဲမှာသူထည့်လိုက်မယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဒီကောင်ကအဲ့ဒီ random တွေကတစ်ခုခောက်ပြီးလို့ပေါ့အဲ့ဒါ property တိုင်းကြာရင်လည်းကြာမယ်မဟုတ်ပေါ့အဲ့ random တိုင်းဒီသွားမယ်ပေါ့လေအဲ့လိုမျိုးသူပြောချင်တာ random theory ကသူသွားမယ်
called coin equals whatever the return value is. So this is indeed like flipping a coin. I'm going to store it.
Python မှာပါလဲဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တစ်ခုခု syntax ကိုသတ်မှတ်လိုက်တာတစ်ခု syntax ကိုသတ်မှတ်လိုက်ပြီးတော့ညီမချင်းနဲ့ရေးလို့ရတယ်တခြား language မှာဆိုရင်တော့တစ်ခုနဲ့သတ်မှတ်ပြီး ing ကိုပါပေါ့လို့အဲ့ဒါ Python မှာမလို့ဘူးတစ်ခုကို coin is equal to ဆိုပြီးတော့သတ်မှတ်ပြီးလိုက်ရတကယ်တော့ coin equal to မဟုတ် sorry coin assign to လို့ခေါ်တယ်
in a variable called coin, whatever that value is, heads or tails. And now, just so I can see what's going on, let's go ahead and print out the value of that string coin. All right, let me go ahead now and run this program in my terminal window.
ဒီမှာသတိထားမိရပါတယ်ဆို random သုံးထားရတဲ့ကြောင့်တစ်ခါနဲ့တစ်ခါကြာတာမတူဘူးလို့ကျွန်တော်တို့ထင်တယ်
Python of generate.py, enter, and it looks like the first coin toss was the heads. Let's go ahead and run it again, and it looks like it was heads again. Maybe you want to chime into the chat here. If I run it a third time, what's it going to be this time? If you want to type your thoughts in the chat. You might think there's a bug here, but this is probability in action. If I go ahead and hit enter a third time, there, it's actually now tails. And again, 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 heads. Now, if we did this an infinite number of times, it would indeed work out to be 50-50. If we only do it a few...
အဲ့လိုမျိုးပန်းစာလုံးခေါက်လိုက်တယ်လို့ပဲသူကဒီမှာ head နဲ့ tail နှစ်ခုကျော်50-50ရောရှိတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့ head ကြမလား tail ကြမလားသူအတိအကျပြောလို့မရဘူးဒါပေမဲ့သူက random အတိုင်းပဲပေါ်နေပြီပေါ့နော်ဒါပေမဲ့သူ့ရာခိုင်နှုန်း50-50ရှိတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဘာလို့ဆိုတော့နှစ်ခုပဲထည့်ထားမယ်လို့ပါ
few times it might not work out as cleanly, but that's how probabilities indeed work. All right, so I've got that now working. Could I have implemented this in a different way? Well, let me show you an alternative to actually using the import keyword alone, and let me introduce the keyword from in Python. So from is a keyword in Python that you can use when importing functions from a module, but it allows you to be a little more introduce an alternative. So I've
in this slide he shares about the use of the library a name library called random. Random is like a dice. If we use random, the object in the array it becomes like a dice. We play a dice and if choose a number randomly. So in this library, if we use random, he will choose the object in the video. He used heads and tails. So like a coin, heads and tail. He will choose to do this object when do this object. This object have a 50% probability. 50% probability. So he print. He assign as coin random dot choice heads and tail, and he print the coin and the output is randomly. Sometimes the output is head. Sometimes output is tails, but it is about 50-50 because that is the function of random.
I've got that now working. Could I have implemented this in a different way? Well, let me show you an alternative to from in Python. So from is a keyword in
now he will use from. He used the random library in a different form.
Python that you can use when importing functions from a module, but it allows you to be a little more specific than import alone. So if I go back to my code here, it's worth noting that what technically I'm doing here by importing random is I'm technically importing everything that's in that module. So not just the function called random.choice, but a few other functions as well. So instead of using this line of code at the top of my file, import random, which will technically give me access to all of the contents therein, A downside of that is that I have to type in random.choice, random.this, random.that, because all of the functions I'm calling have to be associated with the scope of that module. Well, suppose that I just want to call the function as its name, choice, I can do that as well. Let me replace this first line here with from random import choice, and what this does effectively is it loads the function's name, choice, into my current namespace, into the scope of the file I'm working in. What that means is that I now no longer have to specify which choice function I mean. I can just say choice, and so it loads it into the local namespace, that is into my local vocabulary, if you will, so I can just now say choice. This might be advantageous in what cases, do you think? When might you want to import the name of the function explicitly like this, as opposed to just saying random.choice throughout your code when calling a function? Any instincts here for this alternative import using from?
In this slide, he said we can use a from with a combination with combined with the random from he used like a from random import twice. So we can use twice function from the random library more easily. So he write from random import twice. So we do not do we do not have to do uh in front of choice random dot like random dot choice. We rewrite directly a choice. We can use directly choice, but if we use import from and import, or to use a function from the random, what is the difference? Just use the random library.
Hello, I'm Mohammed Omar from Egypt. Maybe if we have a variable that its name is basically like choice, if I have a variable called the choice, so I need to differentiate which choice I choose. So I'm going to choose random.choice.
Yeah, really good instincts. By using the first approach, by just importing random, you're making sure that all of its contents are associated with, are scoped to the random module, so that you can have your own choice function. You can have your own choice variable. You can use the same names as all of the functions or variables that are stored inside of that file without them colliding, so to speak. And this is a good thing. In older languages, it was the case that if you imported someone's library, you better hope that you're not using the same functions or variables as they are, because you might in fact have some kind of conflict. Python and certain other languages allow you as they are, because you might in fact have some kind of hope that you're not using the same functions or variables as they are, because you better hope that you're not using the same functions or variables as they are, because you might in fact have some kind of conflict. Python and certain other languages allow you to scope the names of those functions and variables to the file or the module that they come from, so that's a good thing. But honestly, this is such a short program. Or equivalently,
using from Python can solve many problems like syntax conflict. We don't have to use random again and again. If we and we use what as we just use twice function from the random, so we do not conflict with other function. So this is very efficient in Python. So we can use front to try to use a function from the random, but it's a short program. If we have to write long program, what do we face?
maybe I'm using the choice function in so many places, calling random.choice, random.choice, random.choice. It's just making my code longer and longer and longer. Marginally so, but it's just getting ugly and annoying. I can simply import choice and now tighten up my code a little bit. So as with so many decisions in the past, there's not necessarily one right approach or another. It depends, but I think for those very reasons, sometimes it's better to do what we did the first time, which is only import the module so as to retain the scope therein. Well, let me propose that we transition to another function that comes calling random.choice, random.choice, random.choice. It's just making my code long. Calling random.choice, random.choice, random.choice. It's just making my code longer and longer and longer. Marginally so, but it's just getting ugly and annoying.
Module,
I can
and that's this
simply
here from the
import
documentation rand int. It's a bit hard to say, but it implies get back a random int. And if
So in our country, we now in Happy New Year. So everyone, welcome 2026 and collect in 2026.
If you read the documentation, it's a random int that's between A and B inclusive. So if you were to pass in 1 for A and 10 for B, you would get back a number between 1 and 10 inclusive, including the 1 and including the 10 potentially, each with a 10% probability. So how might I go about using a program like this? Well, let me come back to my generate.py file, and why don't we go ahead and try generating a random number between 1 and 10. You might do this frequently in the real world when you just want someone to pick a random number. You tell them as much and the human responds. Let's get the computer to do the same here. Let me go ahead and delete my 2 lines of code at the bottom, but keep my import random. And let's go ahead and define a variable this time called number, set it equal to the return value of random.randint, and now pass in a value of 1, and
Hereby မှာ cover
B, a value of 10, and now let's go ahead and print the number. I'm going to go ahead in my terminal window and run Python of generate.py and hit enter. 4. Python of generate.py and hit enter. 8. Again. 9. Again. 7. Again. 10. Again. 2 again. And we can do this all day long, and if we add all of those up, they should end up being with 10% probability each. Now, how might you use this information? Well, maybe we're playing a guessing game, or maybe we're trying to randomize the behavior of some character in the game. You can imagine using very simple building blocks like this, just kind of spicing up your program by getting it to do things a little less predictably because you're choosing these values seemingly randomly. And you're deferring to Python to actually do the generation of these numbers using its own algorithms and its own math. Well, what more could we do here? Let me propose that we introduce another function.
So in this slide, he changed and uses of the library random. So he assigns random equal to random.radian. He used the radian function from the random library. In the radian, it does not use the choice functions because he want to random between 1 and 10, 1 to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So he used the radian function. The output is the 2, 5, and etc. So we can also use the radian function to make a random uh, from the random library. Radian, the difference between the radian and choice is choice can use two objects, but radian can use use numbers. Radian can use numbers like from 1 to 10 or 2 to 11, when number 1 is the start and number 10 is the end. So I think radian function can use in the number, but choice can use the string. You can use in string. We can use say as object. The object we enter between the function. So I think the difference between is the radian choice and radian is that.
Function that comes from this random library, yet another that you yourself don't have to implement, shuffle. If you read the documentation for shuffle in the same random
အရှင်းမပြောခဲ့တဲ့ဟာသူက input random သုံးတယ် input random သုံးတဲ့အခါမှာက choice မှာကျွန်တော်သုံးခဲ့တယ်မှာကျွန်တော်အဲ့ဒီမှာထည့်ထားတဲ့အရာတွေကကို choice တင်တဲ့အရာကိုပဲသူထည့်တာဒါပေမဲ့ radian သုံးတာကျွန်တော် number မှာပဲသုံးလို့ရတယ်မှာဘာလို့ဆို1 to 10 2 to 11အဲ့ကြားတဲ့အဲ့မှာပါစကလုံးတွေ1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10အဲ့ထဲမှာပါဥစ္စာတွေ random ခေါက်မယ်ဆိုရင် radian function ကိုသုံးတယ် choice ကြတော့အဲ့လိုမဟုတ် string တွေ object တွေထည့်လို့လည်းရတယ်အဲ့ဒီကဘာလို့သူ့မှာပါထည့်ထားတဲ့ဟာတွေကမှွေမှာဒီရပြီ choice ကဘာနဲ့တူလဲဆိုတော့ပုံတစ်ပုံထဲမှာကိုကနာမည်ဆိုနာမည်ပစ္စည်းတွေထည့်ထားမယ်အဲ့ဒီကကိုယ်နှိုက်ယူရနဲ့တူတယ် radian ကြတော့အဲ့လိုမဟုတ်1 to ဘယ်လောက်အဲ့ကမှာပါစကလုံးတွေယူရနဲ့တူတယ်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့လိုမျိုး select တူတယ်တူပါတယ်နောက်တစ်ခုကျတော့သူဆက်ရှင်းပြမှာက random.shuffle ဖြစ်ပါတယ် shuffle ကြတော့သူကကျွန်တော်ထင်တာပေါ့နော်မကြည့်ရသေးပေမဲ့ random.shuffle က shuffling လုပ်တဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်ကျွန်တော်တို့လိုမျိုးပေါ့ကစားကတ်တွေကိုလှည့်တယ်လိုမျိုးဖြစ်နိုင်ပါတယ် Okay, random.shuffle can be used in the cache shuffling, like cache shuffling. So let's see about
don't have to implement shuffle. If you read the documentation for shuffle in the same random module, you'll see that it takes in a list, for instance, of values and just shuffles them up. It randomizes them like
I think documentation is very important because he say again and again about the documentation or to read documentation. So if we didn't use documentation in the past, I want to advise you to read the documentation. Documentation can download the below the link. Below the link. So I want to encourage to read documentation because documentation can help in our coding life and in the whole of the programmer life. ဒီမှာသူပြောရတာခဏခဏသူကဒီမှာဆိုလို့ရှိရင် program documentation ကြောင့်အများကြီးပြောသွားတယ်အဲ့တော့ကျွန်တော်လည်း documentation ဖတ်တယ်လို့ထင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်
deck of cards here, you might shuffle them so as to put them into seemingly random order. Well, how do I use this based on this function's name? Well, let me propose that we go back to VS Code here, and let me go ahead and this time do the following. Because I need to shuffle something like a deck of cards, let me go ahead and not just import random, but let me give myself a variable called cards that's going to be of type list. And just so I have something to shuffle, I don't need all 52 cards in a typical deck, I'm just going to shuffle 3 cards, a jack, a queen, and a king. I could call those strings anything I want, but I just wanted a list of some values so as to shuffle them up. That is, randomize the order they're in. Well, how does this now work? If you read the documentation for random.shuffle, you'll see that it shuffles the argument in place. That is, unlike many of the functions we've seen, it doesn't return to you a value that contains the shuffled cards in this case. It actually shuffles the list it's given itself. So what this means for my code is that I need to do something like this. Random.shuffle and pass in the variable containing those cards. And then on a final line here, how might I go about printing the cards? Well, I could do this, and I could say print cards, but if I do that, I'm actually going to see Python syntax for lists, and it's just going to format in its own way using commas and the like. I want to print these cards out one at a time. Just going to print here in. Notice it actually something like this. And then on a final line here, how might I go about printing the cards? Well, I could do this, and I could say print cards, but if I do that, I'm actually going to see Python syntax for lists, and it's just going to format in its own way using commas and the like. I want to print these cards out one at a time just because I think it'll look a little better, so we can use some of our syntax from loops and say something like this. For card in cards, go ahead and print out the current card. So what's now happening here? Line 3, I'm defining a list of 3 cards in this order.
In this slide, this is very interesting because he used Fernando Schaeffer, and also he also used the foreign range. So I don't. Can you do somebody know what he gonna do?
Order, Jack, Queen, King. I'm then shuffling those same cards on line 4, and then on line 5, I'm using a for loop. For each of the cards in that list, print it out one at a time. And because I'm using print, one line at a time. Well, let's see the results. Down here in my terminal window, I'm going to run Python of so we can use some of our syntax from loops and say something like this. For card in cards, go ahead and print out the current card. So what's now happening here? Line 3, I'm defining a list of 3 cards in this order. Jack, Queen, King. And I could say print cards, but if I do that, I'm actually going to see Python syntax for lists, and it's just going to format in its own way using commas and the like. I want to print these cards out one at a time just because I think it'll look a little better, so we can use some of our syntax from loops and say something like this. For card in cards, go ahead and print out the current card. So what's now happening here? Line 3, I'm defining a list of 3 cards in this order. Jack, Queen, King. I'm then shuffling those same cards on line 4, and then on line 5, I'm using a for loop. For each of the cards in that list, print it out one at a time. And because I'm using print, one line at a time. Well, let's see the results. Down here in my terminal window, I'm going to run Python of generate.py and hit enter. Queen, King, Jack. Seemingly shuffled because that's not the order I defined earlier. Let's do it again. Queen, King, Jack. Okay, that happens to be the same, but let's see. This could just be bad chance. There we go. Jack, Queen, King. Doesn't look like it's shuffled, but at least we're getting back different orderings now. Again, Jack, Queen, King. Not so good. Jack, Queen, King, not so good. This is someone you probably want to play against with cards. Queen, Jack, King, there we go. But of course, we only have 3 cards here, so there's not that many permutations we might see. And if we do this over time, we will see all of them. But if we had, of course, 13 or 52 cards, we'd see a lot more permutations instead. So we have now these 3 ways to generate random information. One is simple coin toss, if you want to start some kind of athletic event. One.
Let's pause the video here. get two ideas in this from this slide, because if he used for enrich guess in the guess, so he shuffled a cat and he get a cat, he print this cat and he shuffle again and print a from the two cat or something. So to be clear, I want to test this function. First he import the random library and pronounce the random library ခေါ်လိုက်တယ်ခေါ်ပြီးသူကဘာကိုလုပ်လဲဆိုတော့assign လုပ်တယ်ပေါ့လေ assign လုပ်တယ်ဘယ်တော့ assign လုပ်လဲဆိုလို့ရှိရင်CARTS cat ပေါ့ cat တွေကို assign လုပ်တယ် cat ကိုဘာလုပ်လဲဆိုတော့နာမည်ပေးရပထမဆုံးကျွန်တော်ကတော့ king queen he assign king queen and check သူ king queen check လုပ်လိုက်တယ်ပြီးတော့ပိတ်လိုက်တယ်နော်ပိတ်လိုက်ပြီးတော့မြန်လုပ်တယ်ပြီးတော့ random သုံးတယ် random တော့ choice မဟုတ်ဘူးဘာလဲ SU sorry SHU FFL 7ပြီးတော့ gas သုံးလိုက်တယ်ပြီးတော့နောက်တစ်ခုသူသုံးတာ for he use for enrich he use CARD gas and gas သုံးတယ်ပြီးတော့ print cat ကိုထုတ်တယ်နော်ဒါ is example I ran so what happened so king queen jack and queen jack king he shuffle randomly king queen jack so king queen jack king so it can be the program is works if we use just the shuffle what happened in here the print can work cats maybe cat so we ran the program he showed that queen king jack jack queen king so we see jack queen king so we can see clearly if we do not use who the for enrich the shuffling function stay work ဒီမှာကျွန်တော်တို့ပါနော် for enrich ကိုမသုံးလဲ shuffling function ကအလုပ်လုပ်နေအောင်ပဲဒီမှာသူမှာဆိုရင်ဗါ array နဲ့ array ပုံစံနဲ့သူ shuffling လုပ်တာကိုပြထားတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့ကျွန်တော်တို့ကအဲ့ဒါကိုဘယ်လိုလုပ်ချင်လဲဆိုတော့ but we use for enrich for enrich to be more to print out from the array so we use the for array functions so for cat in cats or for cat in cats he extract out the shuffle out of the array ဒီမှာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်သူကဒီ array ထဲမှာပါတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့သူအဲ့ဒါကိုပြန်ထုတ်ချင်တယ်ပြန်ထုတ်နေတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်သူက for array နဲ့သုံးတယ်တကယ်တော့ shuffling လုပ်တာကိုသူကit shows array အနေနဲ့သူပြပြရပါတော့ run ကြည့်ပါမယ် I round because it's not does not guess. It may be get. Yes, Jack Queen King. He we use for enrich, so he shows the in the column, not in the row.
Pick a number between 1 and 10 if you want to decide something based on that. And now using shuffle, we can even take in a list of things and shuffle them about so that we get some kind of random behavior. Well, let me pause here and see if there's any questions yet on random, on modules, or any of these three functions.
Yeah.
Unless we start string in here.